I have the distinct honor and pleasure to introduce our state treasurer, and I'm glad to say now my travel companion and friend, Curtis Loftis.
Thank you, Dennis. It's odd. Is it going here? Yeah. It's odd for me to come someplace and give a talk in Charleston and have a few minutes or 24 hours to spend with folks. If I'm in New York or someplace, they'll say, "Oh, you're so lucky. You get to go to Charleston. You get to eat all that good food and spend time in those nice restaurants." And I say, "Yeah, I get there about 10 minutes before the speech to give my speech. I'll watch everybody else eat. And then I can tell you with great confidence that the Arby's at the Somerville exit is very good." But now I was here with y'all last night. Y'all heard a lot of what I had to say. It was very interesting to meet y'all. I've joked a few times. I'm not sure everybody gets the joke, but I'm a king. I'm a king of the Luddites. I have a hard time with these things. That's why we have young people in my office. We have 80-something staffers at the treasurer's office. We manage between $60 and $70 billion a year. This year maybe 80 or 90 billion, and they're all, every single one of them, much smarter, much more adroit with the technology it takes to get through the day. I think last night it was $41,169,000,000 that we had invested or in the bank last night. So those folks have been working since early this morning. They'll be working till late this afternoon with all our partners and intermediaries to make sure all that settles appropriately and goes back to the right accounts. It's really amazing to see how it works. But I get to come here and spend time with y'all, and it's unusual for me for another reason, because I'm not around people who are innovators. I'm around a lot of government people and then finance people. Finance, generally innovation is you take something old and repackage it and sell it as something new, right? We all know that story. So it's interesting, last night at dinner and then even before, some of the conversations, I would throw out just kind of a comment to see what people would say. Got answers I would never get back from the crew that I normally hang with. So it's interesting. I am on direct contract from the mayor of Mount Pleasant. He has asked me to tell y'all, spend money. We have special tools at the treasurer's office. We know when you leave town, if you have any money left in your pocket, we will know. We have nice restaurants and nice stuff to sell you, and you have money, and we want to make that exchange. So he depends on the tax dollars. Dennis, we definitely want to thank you and your group for staying here in Charleston. You could have gone someplace else for this conference, but the Low Country is a great place. One of the amazing statistics is that when a conference is held in Charleston, the participation rate across the board, regardless of the type of national or international meeting it is, the participation rate goes up as high as it is at any conference they've ever held. It's one of those truisms. I guess Charleston, being known as a great destination, is one of those places that you want to go, but you got to make sure you get there. And it's not on the way to a lot of places. So these conferences are important. At the treasurer's office, we do a lot of things that are not exciting. Those of you who have been in finance know those things. But we also do some things that are fun. And some of them are going to be issues that come up with digital assets. Like we have the unclaimed property program. How many of y'all have ever looked up your state's unclaimed property program and found money? That's a good crowd. Usually you get a half dozen people. In South Carolina, we have $850 million. And there's not a single citizen in the state that thinks that a dollar of it's theirs. We have to call people, we cajole them, all sorts of things. The average claim now is about $500. We have smaller and larger, but in each state there's somebody who runs your program. Generally it's the treasurer's office, and we also have missingmoney.com. That's 47 states gotten together. So if you've traveled around, you're in the military or whatever, you can look for your money. Well, of course, we're soon going to have cryptocurrencies, digital assets. They're going to start popping up, and they're going to be troubles for us. So we started working with our custodian already, Bank of New York, largest custodian in the world. We were working with some of the people in your industry about how we look at these things as unclaimed property. Some are going to be more problematic than others, right? But because it is important. sometimes when I go home on the weekends, I'll take a list of unclaimed property, the larger claims, right? Because it's fun for me. It gets you out of spreadsheets. It gets you out of bureaucratic talk. And I can go chase somebody and try to find some money. My assistant back there, Edward, has been with me. We'll go someplace, and if we've got an hour beforehand, we'll take our list, and we'll try to track somebody down. We had literally traipsed through fields. We kind of burst into an old barn someplace, had a 1920-something vehicle that I don't think the cover's been off of it in, I don't know, 100 years or something, and to find people. Recently, there was a lady who had in North Augusta, and the reason I tell you this is because nobody thinks they have property, right? There's a lady in North Augusta, and her father's name was on our list, and it was $566,000 of stock. He had been a locomotive conductor for CSX, I think it was, and he had taken part of his pay in stock. Well, the family had no idea, and then when he died about 10 or 12 years ago at the age of 93, that stock had just been sitting there. It didn't get closed out into the estate. It came to us 10 years later, and I tracked her down. So I do what I always do on a Saturday. I call them. You know, we teach a lot about you don't answer the phone and give people information. So I'm not asking for any information, but we call her and say, hey, I'm Curtis. I'm the state treasurer, and we've got some funds for you. Your father, as I understand it, was a conductor. She didn't believe me. The more I talked, the more I knew she thinks I'm a crook. So I've been there before, right? I'm a politician. I got it. So I got off the phone, and I think, now how can I do this? So I saw her father was a mason, and so I called the head mason. He lives not too awfully far from me, and he says, I know that family. I'll call him. So he calls him. She thinks he's a crook. So the county treasurer there he's about this tall, but if you want a guy to go through a wall, he's your guy. I mean, he's that guy. He's the fellow you want to be in the foxhole with. So I called him and said, these are one of your peeps. They pay your bills. They're in your county. You need to go down there and talk to them. He says, I know exactly where they live. I'll go down there. A couple days later, he called me and said, she thinks I'm a crook too. So there's a guy named Bill Hicks. Anybody in politics might know him here in South Carolina. Bill is a member of House of Representatives from North Augusta, Aiken area. So I thought about Bill, and then I ran into him on Complex, and I said, Bill, let me tell you what I got. He says, I know that family. I know them personally. I've been in their house. I've sold them insurance, sold them real estate. I said, go see her. He said, I will. And he couldn't believe it was $566,000. He thought I was talking like $5.66 or something. So anyway, I got him past that hurdle. He goes down there, and he talks to her for about 20 or 25 minutes. And then he calls me. And this is exactly what he said. Curtis, I talked to her for 25 minutes. And she said, Bill, for you, I'll take that money. I was thinking in my life, what would prompt me to say those words? I would have said, yeah, give it to me. So you know how you tell a story, maybe you've gone hunting or fishing, and the fish is bigger than anybody's going to believe, so you think like you're telling a tale. So we're processing the claim, and it's a tax-free transaction. We're putting it from the father's name into her name, and somebody on the other end of the office gets in it wasn't a stock certificate, it was a letter of debt from the company that says, we owe this lady $566,000. And they thought, well, this is the same thing. No, the stock had split. So she thought I was a crook at 566. Well, she's going to think at that times two. And plus, we always do a thorough sweep at the end, and she had $200,000 worth of cash dividends as well. So she's up to about $1.3 million. So I call Hickson. I said, Hickson, I can't call her. Can you call her? He says, I think she'll think I'm crooking her now. But by this time, one of the ladies upstairs had worked out a relationship, called her. Now she's got her $1.3 million. And I swear, I guarantee you, she still thinks I'm a crook. But this is unclaimed property, and this is the kind of thing we have to figure out in state government. How are we going to manage that? I don't know that any treasurer has done that yet. Some of the people in that industry have started working with certain entities that could be custodians, but there's some bigger problems that we have from our side of the fence. So we're going to work on that. I think we're going to be one of 10 people in a special pilot that the Bank of New York is having, and we're honored to be there, but they want to keep it with good partners of theirs because they want to find out what all can go wrong, and they want to make sure nobody's going to sue them. So it's interesting. Our job, of course, the state General Assembly has said, we want y'all to study this. We want you to understand it so that you can have a digital assets financial literacy campaign. And we've started a website. In fact, I got a text message from somebody who saw the website. I didn't know that it was that people knew about it, but it's part of our website. We've started something. We've got some pretty good resources up, but we're going to do a lot more. But we had to start because we want to mark our space. And so we're looking. Edward Frazier, Edward, stand up so everybody know who you are. Edward's one of those youngsters who's helping me with this. He's doing it all, and he's in charge. He'll have, without any restraints on their abilities, he'll have our banking, our investments, our legal, our PR. He'll have the whole staff that'll be able to work for him because the General Assembly is expecting us to do a lot. We're going to try to have a website that not only can you go to and be age appropriate and perhaps even in some ways industry specific, but we can link it to, say, high schools or grammar schools or whoever, because they don't have the resources. We've been involved with financial literacy for a long time. When I became treasurer, I was elected in 2010, and we started in January 2011. I was pretty close, still on the heels of the 2008 disaster, when the financial crisis came, which the financial experts now tell me we're supposed to call the dislocation. I like that, the dislocation. We started looking at that because I would ask all the folks, what really happened in 2008-9? And you can't believe the examples of boondoggery that we got. All these ideas, which some of them may have been accurate in a way, but a lot of them were just to obfuscate. I would have been better off, Mark, had I watched The Big Short early, because it couldn't sum up any better. But what we finally figured out at the end of the day, all those fancy instruments and all the problems that there were with the dealers and the brokers, the whole bit, the biggest problem was the average American thought that they own about $80,000 or $100,000 a year, could live in a $500,000 house, have 2 cars, have a pool, have their kids in fancy schools, not have any savings, and not have any retirement. They're not bad people. They just had never been taught. And then somebody came along on the airwaves and said, hey, you can have this. So we started, along with other treasurers in their own states, we've started doing this financial literacy for a long time. And we think that the financial literacy for digital assets should be no different from financial literacy for credit cards or checking accounts or whatever. So we're going to overlay that. We have a program where we teach the teachers. We actually pay teachers to come take some classes and then go back and teach other teachers. It's kind of like Maybelline, was that, and Amway, those type of things. We pay them, and I think could be like $1,500 a year or something, which when you start off at $40,000 a year, it's not insignificant. The hurdle we have is not to teach them and so that they be confident. We can get that done. The hurdle is they don't have time. If you look at the average curricula for a high school teacher, she's got this much time and that much to teach. So we've worked ways where the financial literacy can be woven into their curricula, whether they're teaching art or history or even PE. That's the kind of thing we've done. So we're excited about that. It's our primary goal. Next to that is, how does the state look at it? What are we going to do with it? Unclaimed property is one of the first things we want to do, but other states are ahead of us in taking payments. That seems easy enough, but there are problems with collateralization, so we're talking to people about that now. And it's like everything in government. It's not the problem you think you have, it's these other problems, right? So I won't go into them now, but there's all these subsidiary problems that you have to knock down, you have to go through them, work them out, and make agreements. I see, Dennis, what's my time like here? There's something that, as the commissioner said last night, my opinions are my own. Being in politics, I don't have to be that careful about it, but I do want to be careful because I'm here, and I'm not a proponent or an opponent of anything y'all do because, one, I'm not smart enough to know, and two, it changes so quickly. But one thing I do know a lot about, and I've been studying for 5 years, is not something that's specifically in the treasurer's office, but it is something that affects us all. And by being treasurer, I have a lot of access to information. And I've been researching for 5 years what's actually going on in finance, and in our bigger world. At my expense, I've gone to London a couple times because there's a lot of resources there, San Francisco, LA, Portland, Seattle, Chicago, New York, Boston, a couple other places. What is really happening in our world? We're all there. We all see we're in the middle of a cultural revolution. And what does it mean to us? And I'm not going to try to get too far into that because it's some politics in that. But we are in the middle of a revolution, and the West is in the middle of that. And it's going to affect every single one of us. We are further along with that revolution than you might would think, whether you like it or whether you don't. Where I sit, I can promise you, we are far further along than most people think. For instance, I watched the Commerce Secretary of South Carolina say that if we want to get in line and give people like Intel $1 billion or $1.5 billion for an incentive, we first have to go create a green energy grid. We have to spend billions to satisfy someone else's ESG requirement so we can give the richest people in the world billions. This is unsustainable. And this type of thing is everywhere. And the one thing I know is that the working man and the broad middle class is not served. It's people like me, it's like some of y'all. If you're rich, if you've got a little power, if you've got some influence, got a little age on you, we do okay by all of this. But I am terrified about the future. One reason I've taken a personal interest in this, which I don't understand that much, is that the solutions that the problems of the West are having are not going to come from people who look and act like me. My crowd gave up. We signed off. We're taking the checks, and we're enabling all of this activity. It's going to come from y'all. It's going to come from people who can move from a state to another state at the drop of a hat, and will do that. It's going to come from people who realize that what's happening today and Bitcoin and crypto and digital assets is not going to resemble what's here in 5 years. And in 10 years, it's going to be completely different. Every day you can go out and find products that are being scaled to effectively each and every one of us. They're sold to us that they're good things, they're going to help us. It's like Ronco, over and over and over, the same things, just different hype. What y'all are doing actually increases freedom. The products they want to give us decrease our freedom. Read a long white paper yesterday about wearable devices for school children so they can determine and data mine their heartbeat and respiratory activity as they go through their day, 24 hours of the day. So they know how excited they become or how anxious they become when they're studying math or when they're going to school or when they're having dinner with their parents. That does not sound to me like something that is going to help us with freedom. We need innovators like y'all. And I know you're all sorts of people in here, all different parties, at least 3 countries that I know about. We need you on the case because it is going to be people who are true innovators, not just people making a product that's going to be packages resold, packaged and resold, and packaged and resold. We need people who are looking for systems that will keep us out from under the overarching global arm of authoritarianism. And if y'all can do that, you will have committed more and given more to humanity than you will ever believe. And it was funny, I wasn't going to talk about any of this, but last night in talking to some of y'all, it just came to me. I said, this is the crowd I've got to know more. And I've got to have faith that this crowd is happening in other rooms, and maybe in South Carolina, other states, other countries. I know it is happening, and we need you to do it. I won't belabor the point. I will just say, if you sit at my desk and make a concerted opportunity to read the documents and to understand what's happening in Washington and in Columbia, it will depress the hell out of you. But being with y'all has made me feel good. and I want to thank you. So enjoy your time. Spend your money, because while you're here, we want to make sure we get our share. Thank you very much. Enjoy yourself.